in the middle of the night. I woke up and I thought I heard a noise to my right calling my name.
Hmm.
And I tried to turn and look, but there was a big piece of furniture there, so there couldn't have been anyone there.
Mhm.
And then I decided I was going to stand up and turn on the light to see what was going on. And I was peeled. I was glued to the bed, and I had to like force myself up. And now I look back on it and realize I was leaving my body.
This is Dale Cross, and welcome to another edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. This is the audio video podcast that features spiritually uplifting stories from awakening souls to help inspire you on your own soul journey. On this episode, my guest is Diane Brandon. She's an integrative, intuitive counselor and intuition teacher. She's an author and speaker, specializing in personal path growth, and this is really cool, dream interpretation. We're going to get into that. That sounds really cool. She also conducts wellness classes on the wellness aspects of sleep and dreams and stress relief via guided meditation. She's the author of Dream Interpretation for Beginners, Intuition for Beginners, and Invisible Blueprints, Intuitive Insights for Fulfillment in Life. And you got to check this out. She has an amazing new book out. It's called Born Aware, Stories and Insights from Those Spiritually Aware Since Birth. That's now out. She is the former host of Naturally Vibrant Living on blogtalkradio.com and Web Talk Radio, and she's the former contributor on ecology.com. Diane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dale. I am very happy to be here with you today.
And I'm so happy to have you because I think our guests are going to get so much out of this. So, Diane, let's start with the question I always ask folks on this podcast, and that is, tell us a little bit about your spiritual background from when you were a child. Did you
Oh,
have spirituality in your life?
well, I was born with it. Um, I have always remembered what I thought when I was born, and it was a spiritual awareness. And so that has served as a backdrop throughout my life. It has never gone away. So I didn't have to learn how to quote unquote be spiritual. The awareness was there. And if anything, it was difficult for me to be here or to fit in or to be human initially. And then I grew up trying to figure out how to fit in. You know, you're a child, you are dependent upon your parents, you're dependent upon adults, and you're trying to learn what the rules are and what to do. And so, in some ways, even though the backdrop of the spiritual awareness was always there, it's like I was trying to, I guess, fit in. At the same time, I had an awareness of some things. It was interesting because there were things I knew, from my at birth memories, and there were things, that I had to kind of figure out. One of those had to do with intuition, which when I was growing up, it was called ESP, or psychic phenomena. And I always had the sense, that there was some connection between that and spirituality, but I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't really figure it out at that point. But I grew up in a fairly normal family of the time, and I had an interest in something spiritual, such as ESP, and then dreams as an undergrad. I tried to find books on sleep and dreams and research on sleep and dreams. But at that point in time, because I am so old, you didn't find a lot of people into spirituality. It was not really discussed. And it was really in my 20s that I met a handful of people who were into spirituality. And so it was like, oh, there are other people with an interest in this. And that started to open the door somewhat.
Mhm.
But my life was still on two tracks. The human part of me, you know, trying to figure out and trying to find my way on this planet, this three-dimensional planet, and the other part of me that was, to say, firmly rooted in my awareness of the other side. And so there was this big dichotomy. And it was actually, I think, wasn't until I was in my late 30s or early 40s that I met a woman who was an intuitive, very spiritual, and she started groups, classes, and I was in her second group, and she called it the mastermind. But that's how I started to meet other people who were spiritually oriented. At the same time, I guess I took for granted my spiritual awareness and didn't think it was, you know, all that much. So I was trying to figure out all this other stuff. And I had a few opening experiences. Um, when I was in grad school, I had a very interesting experience in the middle of the night. I woke up and I thought I heard a noise to my right calling my name.
Mm.
And I tried to turn and look, but there was a big piece of furniture there, so there couldn't have been anyone there.
Mhm.
And then I decided I was going to stand up and turn on the light to see what was going on. And I was peeled. I was glued to the bed, and I had to like force myself up. And now I look back on it and realize I was leaving my body. Instantaneously, I was over at the door with the light switch,
Mhm.
and I turned on, or I tried to turn on the light switch, but I couldn't manipulate it. And then I thought, well, I will try the phone. And my roommate and I had a phone with this really long cord so we could move it back and forth between the bedrooms. And instantaneously, I was in her room and trying to pick up the phone, and I couldn't pick it up. And instantaneously, I realized, oh, I guess I'm not in my body.
Wow.
And then I zoomed back and I was in my body, and I woke up and I thought, what in the world? And that was my first conscious out of body experience.
Mhm.
I went back to sleep, and then I had another dream in which I was in this old house with these older women, and I was telling them about the experience, and they told me that was a test.
Mm.
And I didn't know what the test was about. I didn't know if I had flunked or passed. But I remember telling them in the dream, oh, I had a dream a couple of weeks ago on the full moon that presaged this.
Mhm.
And it was interesting when I woke up because I didn't tend to think about the phases of the moon then.
Mhm.
So that was some sort of opening experience. I never thought I was intuitive, even though when I looked back on it years ago, I'd had, some experiences in junior high and high school,
Mhm.
which I discounted at the time. And then I continued in that mastermind group. I started to meet other people who were into such things. And then I had pursued acting and singing most of my life.
Mm. Mhm.
So that was my focus. But of course, you know about starving artists
Right.
needing to make more money. So a friend suggested that I work for a 900 line as a psychic. And I'm
Okay.
thinking, I can't do that. So then I thought, okay, in grad school, I had gotten tarot cards and I Ching, which a lot of people do. And I kind of practiced, and I was really afraid to try to do this, but I applied to a 900 line, which was the Psychic Friends, the Dionne Warwick
Mm.
line.
Oh, the
And I
Dionne
had to do
Warwick.
a
I
few
remember that.
yes, yes.
I
I had
think
to
there
do a
was
few,
like infomercials. Sorry to
yes,
interrupt you. There was like infomercials on TV or
oh,
something.
yes, they advertised a lot.
You were in that?
Yes, and I had to do
Interesting.
a few sample readings.
Mhm.
And then to my surprise, I was hired.
Mm.
And so it took me a while to get up the courage to even sign in. And I finally signed in, and somebody called in, and she was pregnant and wanted to know about the gender of her baby. So
Mm.
my plan was to use like tarot cards, but in the spur of the moment, I just closed my eyes and I gave her information, and she seemed pleased. I mean, that's really like it can only be one of two things. And I was so nervous that I promptly signed out. And so,
Okay.
long story short, all of this was a process for me, Dale. It was not
Mhm.
sudden, but I was working the 900 line. I was getting positive feedback, and I was shocked. And then before a year was up, I was asked to work, like do a psychic fair. So all of this was like doing things without knowing what I was doing and getting positive feedback. It took me a good 3 or 4 years before I started even having any confidence with what I was doing. And and it was an organic process. It just grew. And I was living in Chapel Hill in the Research Triangle in North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. And there was so much going on in metaphysics and spirituality. It was a wonderful time to be doing this
Mhm.
because I was connecting with people. I started going to a metaphysical store in Raleigh to do sessions, and I eventually was doing them in Charlotte and Wilmington and Greensboro, and just driving, driving, driving. And so along the way, I started to research some things, the first of which was intuition, because I was like, what is this that I'm working with? And so I really started researching it. That led to writing about it and speaking about it and teaching it. And because dreams have been a special interest of mine, I say dreams, really what we're doing while we're sleeping and what is going on. It's our other world.
Mhm.
And so I was always fascinated by sleep and dreams. So I was exploring that more and researching that. And that led to writing Dream Interpretation for Beginners. And it has just grown and unfolded. And I was just led to writing Born Aware. I hadn't even thought about it because I didn't go around saying, well, I've always remembered what I thought when I was born. What are your earliest memories? I just didn't think it was unusual.
Mhm.
And I was doing a session for a client, and she mentioned her at birth memories. And I said, oh, I have those too. And then a few months later, in a workshop I was teaching, intuition workshop, a woman shared her pre birth memories in the context of an exercise. And I said, that's three of us. So I knew I was being given a message. I thought about it, and I looked for other people to interview. And that material, that information, I just love working with because, as I said, all of this has been an organic process. And even
Mhm.
though I thought, okay, I'm learning about intuition, and Invisible Blueprints was my first book. That was really about what I'd learned from doing sessions. And then it's like, okay, there's dreams, and there's the born aware, what I call the born aware phenomenon. But I'm thinking more and more, all of these are interconnected. We can say we're talking about intuition, we're talking about dreams, we're talking about other types of spirituality, but they're all interconnected.
Mhm.
And the one thing that came out during working on Born Aware was chewing on our human side, our human persona, and what I call our higher soul awareness. And I think a lot of us wish we didn't have all that stuff with the personal side and all the fears and the things to work on, the
Mhm.
things to clear, because it just doesn't feel great.
Mhm.
But I also know that it happens for a reason, because if we're here to unfold and grow, we have to have positive and negative.
Mhm.
And I started chewing on I noticed throughout my life that I would say, well, on one level I feel this, on another level I feel that. And so I started to chew on what that was, and I built that in as a question when I was interviewing people for Born Aware. Finally realized the light bulb went off that this is the difference between our human side and what I call our higher soul awareness.
Hmm.
And they both exist for a reason. I personally would love to hang out on the higher soul awareness
Right.
the whole time, but
Mm-hmm.
there's that other stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've chewed on that a lot, and how important it is to be able, we know, to be able to work on clearing our stuff, but also to be able to access the higher soul awareness, because it gives us that spiritual perspective.
Yeah.
And I think when we are entrenched in our human side, it can be not only painful, but it can be difficult to understand a lot of what goes on in our lives and a lot of what goes on in the world. So that to me is very important. So I know I'm rambling.
No, no, that's great.
I know I'm rambling. Um, it's also been strange to me because I've always loved to sleep. It's
Oh, okay.
the closest I can come to not being here, to
Ah,
being back
okay.
on the other side.
Right.
And I miss the other side. I have always remembered, along with what I thought when I was born, I've always remembered being with God, the divine.
Hmm.
And that connection has never gone away. It's like being tethered. But at the same time, it's very uncomfortable to here because I tend not to have that immediacy
Mm-hmm.
of being with God. And so I have always longed for home.
Hmm.
I have
Yeah.
always longed to go back.
So you have pre-birth memories.
Yes, I wouldn't say huge ones.
Hmm.
I can't.
What can you tell us about that?
The overriding one is being with God, my connection with God.
Yeah.
And and I can share this. God is not an old man with a long white beard.
Oh,
God
really?
is more of this
Oh, okay.
massive, massive energy field.
Mm.
And the energy, excuse me, is unmistakable, absolutely unmistakable. And so that's the number one thing that I remember. And I remember little bits and pieces. I remember that things were abstract. It
Mhm.
not three-dimensional. It was energy. And I think there's certain things I brought back with me, like I love a lot of colors.
Mhm.
You have vibrant colors on the other side.
Mhm.
So my memory of the other side is not as clear as some people's.
Sure.
There are certain things that I remember, but I've also, through my work with clients, have gotten more information about the other side,
Mm.
what happens when we transition, and there are different levels. Um, so it's familiar terrain to me, even though I can't remember a lot.
Mhm.
And I know it sounds silly to say it over and over again, but that's that's home.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you're able to use some of your experiences to help your clients. Tell me a little bit about that. So, what exactly do you do with your clients with regards to the dream interpretation?
Ah, um, I interpret dreams, number one, and I've
Hmm.
kind of come up with my own procedure for that. And and I've learned that dreams are wonderfully complex and varied, and different people have different styles of dreaming. And
Hmm.
so with clients, I try to get a sense of what the dream is trying to tell them. I'm not a believer in a one-size-fits-all approach to dreams. I am not a believer that if this person had a dream, then somebody else could interpret it from their vantage point
Mhm.
because it was this person's experience and it has specific meanings for that person.
Mhm.
And I've learned that dreams can have several different valid meanings for the person who had the dream.
Mhm.
Um, our unconscious, different dreams will come from different sources. A lot of them come from our unconscious. Sometimes they come from other people, or some of them are actual experiences. So I feel that my job in working with somebody else on dreams is to try to get a sense of what the dream is telling the person. And it can be about anything. And it can be about life path. And it can be about a problem we're dealing with at the present time, or a relationship, or a spiritual matter.
Mhm.
And some dreams can be about several of those things at the same time, which to me is one of the beautiful aspects of dreams.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and I remember having a past life dream years ago, and I still haven't figured out the significance, but it was waking up and, you know, don't let the bad humors out. So I knew it was like medieval time.
Mhm.
And another dream, I don't know, was ancient, and I don't know where, but I was in the air and levitated, and it felt like it was in a religious place, cathedral or something.
Mhm.
So there are little tidbits here and there. But also, I have seen that while we're dreaming, our unconscious can be working on problems that we in our waking life are trying to figure out. I mean, a lot of people have the experience of going to bed with something on their minds, and
Mhm.
wake up in the morning, you have the answer.
Yes.
And so with clients, I try to teach them how to work with that and incubate dreams so
Mhm.
that they can, it's like a post hypnotic suggestion, but it's pre sleep that you're trying to ask your unconscious to help you with that. And so they're all
Okay.
different types of dreams and all sorts of benefits we can get out of them. So
Mhm.
that's how I try to help clients with dreams, but at the same time, not just interpret one dream, but talk to them about tools they can be using with their sleep and dream state. And
Okay.
they're wonderful tools that they help us in our lives, in our unfolding, if that
That's
makes sense.
beautiful. Yeah. So, and how long have you been helping clients with dream interpretation? How many years? You must have a lot of experience in this area.
Well, I actually started interpreting dreams way before I started working with my intuition. And I
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
doing it
Oh.
professionally, I was just doing it
Mhm.
because of the interest and because I'd been researching it all. So if I were to quantify it, pardon me while I try to do some counting, over 50 years maybe.
Oh, there you go. A wealth of experience. So in that time, after you started doing it professionally, what stands out? Do you have any clients? Of course, you can keep them anonymous, but do you have any experiences you could share with us where you helped a client interpret a dream and it had a major outcome for them in their life?
Oh, I remember one, and it's in my book. And it was a woman, I'm not going to remember all of the dream, but it had to do with her childhood
Mhm.
and her relationship with her mother.
Mm.
And there were unresolved issues, and her mother was no longer with us on this level. And I think the dream really gave her some insight into those issues so that she could kind of, wrap them up. Um, Another client, well, he wasn't a client, he was in my dream group that I used to have on Facebook. As a child, had recurring dreams of blinding light, and he was his the past life was in Japan when
Hmm.
one of the atomic bombs went off, was dropped.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so once we teased out the meaning, I think he no longer had those dreams because he didn't know what they were about. He had no idea what they were about. Um, Trying to remember other examples. They're not coming in well. Um, Sometimes there are past life dreams because of perhaps what I call a bleed through. There's something from that lifetime that has affected this one. And
Mm.
that can be with dreams, but it can also be with regression because I
Mhm.
do not just individualized guided meditation, but I do regression as well.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, I had a client within the past month who um, got a huge aha. And client confidentiality, I can't share specifics, but it
Okay.
had to
Okay.
do with abuse in the present lifetime. And for the first time, she was able just spontaneously through the regression to let it go, have it be healed, which was
Mhm.
huge for her because she'd carried that all her life and it had been very painful for her. So we never
Yeah.
know when we're doing any type of modality, whether it's working with our intuition or regression or dream work, we do not know when we're going to have an inner transformation. I call it moving energy. And
Mhm.
and we may not even set out to do that. And it can just happen. That's one of the things I think is beautiful about inner work through whatever modality it is. And we have a lot more healing modalities these days. So I feel like I'm just a small cog in the wheel of a lot of what is going on these days. I have just a little tiny piece.
Oh, but you're making a very big contribution, I think. I believe you on that when you just mentioned this confidential one that you can't go into too much detail, that's okay, but where this woman has been completely delivered of that situation because I did a past life. I went to someone and they put me into a trance and I relived because there was some fear I was dealing with in this present life. And for some reason, I felt it might be connected to something in a past life. And sure enough, as soon as I revisited that memory that came up in the hypnosis, when I came back out of that hypnosis, I've never had the fear ever since.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is. It's really
And you
beautiful.
didn't set out to go, I'm going to go to this time period or this
No,
lifetime,
no,
but we tend to go where we need to go.
that's right.
Yes, that's
It was just like
wonderful.
a guided meditation, I think, kind of like, is it Brian Weiss? Is that
Yes, yes.
similar to that, I think, where you just, maybe where you look down at your shoes and where are you walking? You look around. I don't know. It's a kind of a scene, but it didn't feel like I was making it up. It felt like it was more like a memory. Felt like it was something streaming into my consciousness,
Well, the
like a
fact that your
remembrance.
fear vanished,
Yes, that's
that's
significant.
I think it's that's the proof in the of the pudding or the
Yes.
yes, I think.
Yeah.
And
I
what
mean,
I have found through regressing people over the years is we go where we're supposed to go. So
mhm.
it's almost a little bit of a faith walk. We don't know what we're going to experience. We don't know where we're going to go, but we just flow with how we're being guided and with what we experience. And then it takes on a life of its own.
Mhm,
We
mhm.
go where we're supposed to go, we experience what we're supposed to experience, and something shifts.
Yeah.
Something shifts. It's almost miraculous.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, I
It
think it's
is. It
wonderful.
was. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Yes, yeah. Because sometimes some energy in my life has felt kind of stuck, and I tried many different modalities. This past life regression thing really, really helped in this particular case, and I was truly grateful to no longer have to deal with that
Absolutely. And so
fear.
and for something else, it could be another modality that might
Yes.
help. And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think a lot of this has to do with working with what lies beneath the surface,
Yes.
that inner work, no matter
Yes.
what modality we're using. And I think once we do that and once we're on that path, it's difficult to go back to just a superficial surface life
It's,
or
ab-
orientation.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now,
Yeah.
one thing I've never had until now, as of the recording of this video, I've never had an OBE. Now, you talked about at the beginning of the interview, you talked about how you had an out-of-body experience. Now, was this, and it sounds like it was spontaneous. You weren't
Yes,
trying to consciously induce it. Is that correct?
correct. It just happened, but I know on another level it was guided
Okay.
because of that
Fair.
dream I had 2 weeks before that
Right.
presaged it, but
Oh,
I didn't try to make anything happen.
right.
And
Do
it
you think
scared me.
though it scared you? Okay.
Being
Did
out
you
of
think?
body, all of us, it's like,
Yeah.
ah,
Right, right. But did you think that it might have been triggered, though, although unconsciously triggered by the group that you were attending?
well, the
Because you
group
said
came
you were,
later because that experience was in grad school.
oh,
Um,
okay.
Now, my roommate was also spiritual. Neither of us had fully explored it. So I don't know if that was, you know, made it more acceptable or something. I don't know.
Mhm.
And she and I became very close, and we would tell each other our dreams in the morning. Um,
Mhm.
but the way I look at that, Dale, is that was when it was supposed to happen, and so it happened. And
Right.
so I should share this, and I know this may be controversial for some people. And this came through a meditation. Two of my close friends and I would do these monthly meditations.
Mhm.
And in one, and this is probably about 6 years ago, we were taken to a place, and and it was the place where we are encoded with the plan for our next lifetime.
Mm. Okay.
And it's like I knew this is an energetic encoding. And I
Mhm.
know some people may disagree with that because humans like to feel that they have free will about everything.
Everything. Right.
I think when you get to the higher perspective, you realize it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
but,
Yes.
but that was a wonderful experience because
And
I
was
couldn't.
that in a dream or an out-of-body experience?
It was in group meditation, the
A
three of
group
us,
meditation.
and
Okay.
and and we just and we haven't done them in years, but we were doing them once a month, and we just get into a meditative state, and we would let our energies connect, and then
Mm.
we would just see where we were led,
Mhm.
what we were experiencing, and so they would unfold. But in this one, it was like being taken to a level, and I just knew this is where we're encoded energetically with the plan for our lives.
Mhm. Mhm. Interesting.
Um, yeah, it was and I've remembered that experience because it was so nice. But yeah, we used to do some wonderful meditations together,
Now,
not trying to guide them, just seeing
mhm.
how we were led.
Okay. Just let it unfold naturally.
Absolutely, I'm big on
Now, I
that.
have a question for you about the out-of-body experiences. Do you think that there's any danger to inducing out-of-body experiences? Like, do you think that maybe people need to be in a state of unconditional love before they attempt? I mean, in your case, it was spontaneous, but there's a lot of people on the internet nowadays that are trying to induce through meditation. They're trying to leave their body. And I feel that the people that have the more negative type of experiences are really not in a place where they're prepared to do it, and they're just doing it recreationally for fun. And I always wonder if maybe it's better to be spiritually prepared for these sorts of things. And I feel like being in a place of unconditional love, David Hawkins talks about the scale. So being in the 500 scale. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. David Hawkins.
Not a lot.
Okay, so he has this scale that's based on kinesiology. So if you vibrate under 100, that's like guilt and shame. Not a very beautiful place to be, but a lot of people vibrate in this very low area. People like that attempt near death, or not near death, out of body experiences tend to have a very negative, obviously, experience because they're creating their own reality based on their current point of vibration. But he talks about when you get to 400, is a realm of the intellect, which is a much better place to be. A lot of people are in the 400s. But when you get to 500, it's called divine love or unconditional love. And he says that if you can maintain, obviously people go up and down a little bit,
Yes.
right? But if you can keep your vibrational set point in and around the 500 level, you're completely protected. You're completely protected. And so I feel like if you were to attempt an out-of-body experience from that place, you could have a very nice, loving, safe experience. What's your opinion on, do you think people should try out-of-body willy-nilly and just attempt these things, or do you think they should be prepared vibrationally first?
I feel, and I think that's a wonderful question. I feel that if we haven't done a lot of our inner work, if we have a lot of fears
Yes.
and or negativity, I
Mm,
feel that we may have more uncomfortable, unpleasant experiences when we go out of body.
yeah.
And I feel like this is why the inner work is so important. And of course, you know about the Monroe Institute
Yes.
where people go to learn to go out of body. I feel that we have to have done a lot of our inner work and have some sort of underpinning of some sort of spiritual understanding.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not a proponent of being positive all the time or in divine love all the time because I
Mhm.
feel that it's more natural for us to go back and forth, number one. And number two, if we look at the research done by Institute of HeartMath, are you familiar
Mhm.
with them?
Yes, I
Well,
love
one thing
them.
they found is that what is optimum for our health is heart rate variability, which means feeling different types of emotions, not just the
Interesting.
coherent positive ones, but also those negative ones. And I
Hmm.
feel that when we try to be positive all the time, we're actually repressing.
Yeah.
Whereas if we are feeling something that is less than positive, I regard emotions as signals. I
Mhm.
feel that it's helpful to go, okay, I acknowledge I'm not feeling, you know, perfectly positive. What
Mhm.
is causing this? What is underneath this? And
Mhm.
then it's given us something else to work on and
Mhm.
heal. So that resonates with me. I feel like it's a more natural approach.
Mhm.
I feel that over time on our journeys, as we are clearing, as we are learning more spiritually, as we are doing more of our inner work, and with meditation, how it can change us. I feel like over
Mhm.
time, we are doing this. Our set point is
Mhm.
changing,
Mhm.
and we're evolving and getting to more positive places. But I feel, and I could be wrong on this, that while we're on this planet as humans, we don't necessarily get to stay 100% on those positive levels.
Sure.
I would love to.
Sure. But there is something called toxic positivity too, right?
Yes.
Uh, where people go to yoga classes and it says if you don't have a smile, you're not welcome. And I'm like, oh, this is not good because you should be able to be yourself. And you don't always feel positive emotion, but to send love to that negative, so-called negative emotion, because I think negative and positive are just two poles of the
Yes,
same one energy, right?
yes, yes, yes.
And so the shadow work is important, but we can also get caught up in the shadow work too. So it's a real delicate dance, I feel, because some
Absolutely.
people go so much into the shadow work that they lose touch with the reality. And then you have this thing that I got caught up for in a while, but I got out of it, thank God, which is called radical non-duality. And the radical non-duality is particularly insidious and dangerous because you're told to kill your ego, dissolve the identification with being a person, so you begin to deny your humanness, you begin to deny the body, which is a vessel for the divine, and it can lead people, well, some people have lost their lives as a
Oh,
result of going down that path. But it's quite insidious because it seems so good intentioned at the beginning, it's like when you get into it, but you don't realize it's a kind of fundamentalism, much like fundamentalist evangelical Christianity, which tells you to shut your critical mind off
yes,
because it tells you your mind, okay, well, it's a little different than Christianity in that, just to educate you if you're not aware, the radical non-duality teachings tell you that your mind is the ego, and you want to dissolve that. But in doing so, you stop questioning everything, and that's a very dangerous place when you no longer have access to your critical mind,
I
and
get
you
it.
just blindly accept the teachings. And they're basically teaching you that concepts are all BS, that it's all just a story, and that the story is an illusion, so you don't need to pay attention to the story anymore. And I'm like, ooh, this is not a very good thing.
It's
uh be,
repression.
it's repression.
It's repression. And going
Yes.
back to what you mentioned about going to a yoga class, that's groupthink.
Yeah, yeah, well, there's a lot of these how do you call it, these self-development group that are actually just cults, but
Yes,
they look good because there's personal development, but they're the group. There's a special term for it. I can't remember. Group think, group, but you totally lose your individuality. And I feel like we are individual fractals of God. And we're here to express, and that's the joy. I found that with the radical non-duality path, although there is some truth to it, but it's all wrapped up, right? And in a lot of untruth as well. But it really gets you to a point of joylessness because you feel dead, because there's no
yes,
person. You feel like an empty shell. And, you're walking around in this no mind state and become like a bit of a zombie. Not a lot of fun, but it's becoming very popular these days on the internet. And that's why I want to warn people to stay away from that because it's just so extreme.
well, it's
You
it's
know,
almost as if there is a belief in with some people that in order to be spiritual, we have to castigate ourselves, whip ourselves,
yes,
and not be who we are.
yes, it's the
And
path of the renunciate.
yes,
And I
yes,
don't think that's true spirituality. I mean, that's not, because I like the Abraham Hicks teachings. I don't know if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks.
somewhat.
Okay, so in their teachings, joy is our true nature. And living in alignment with our true nature means when we feel good, we have an emotional guidance system, which is the emotions we feel. And if something doesn't feel good, it is because it's not in alignment with our higher self. When something feels good and we move towards that. But if we try to repress that desire, which is what they teach you to do in a non-duality, then you can make yourself sick,
Yeah,
because the body has certain functions and they're being denied. And when you turn that off, because the body is also divine, I feel that
yes.
everything is one. And I think it's about integrating the ego, not killing the ego. You integrate it.
Oh, yes, yes. And I think it's important to remember that we are all individuals. And
Yes.
that one person's spiritual path that may have led them to positive things is not necessarily our own spiritual path, that we
Sure.
need to honor who we are. We need to try things that resonate and
Yeah.
see where we're led, because it's a process and it can be an organic process. And I honor individuality. I don't try to repress it or poo poo it or say it shouldn't exist. I,
Mhm.
I'm big in my work with clients on what I call essence,
Mm.
being able to find who we uniquely are on the deepest level in this lifetime and embrace it
Yes.
and allow ourselves to express it in our lives. It helps with self esteem, it
Yes.
brings us more joy, and
Yes.
that's starting from within as opposed to trying to mold ourselves to something outside of ourselves.
Mm, mm, mhm.
So I think we can be our own teachers. And
Yes.
I think we don't immediately get to there, wherever there is. It is
Right.
that organic process, and that we can find happiness and fulfillment along the way and pay
Yeah.
attention to what speaks to us as
Well,
individuals.
I love your message because we're on the same page, Diane, because I have to say to you that it was just a short time that I dabbled in the radical non-duality, but I snapped out of it pretty quick when I realized that what I thought was inner joy, because I was constantly told, but you have inner joy. You don't feel it in your heart anymore, but because the heart is kind of denied, right, in that teaching. It's more impersonal love. That's what they teach, not the warm fuzzies in the heart. That's kind of denied. And I'm like,
It
no,
sounds like
wait a
it's an
sec.
intellectual love.
Well, it's very paradoxical because they're teaching you to get rid of your intellect altogether.
Hmm.
And yet it's yeah, they're basically teaching you to drop all concepts, but it's a concept about that you should drop your concepts. So it's still
Yes, yes,
concept, you know,
yes. Double speak.
double speak. And I know that a lot of the people that teach it have good intentions. So I'm not putting these people down. That's their path, that's their journey. But I have to say, I've never felt so alive since I left that.
Well, that's very telling.
Yeah, because now I feel the joy again. And I had that before, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I was very shocked that I got sidetracked,
But
but
it's
that's
something.
okay because I learned from it.
Exactly. Exactly. It was an experience that you gained from.
And everything I believe is meant to be. Everything is perfect. There are no mistakes.
Absolutely.
It's just feedback.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think we're on the
Totally
same page.
agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tell me, Diane, before we wrap things up, because this has been a very beautiful conversation, I would really like to hear you tell us a little bit more about this latest book. So Born Aware, can you tell us more about that, please?
Yes, yes. The way I define born aware is it is remembering from birth, always remembering what you thought when you were born and never having forgotten it. And those thoughts at birth were spiritual in nature. And so I started off, I interviewed people, I asked everybody the same questions. And I started to see these commonalities from one person to the next who had been born aware. For example, there was natural intuitive ability, there was a love of nature and animals, there was an awareness that everything and everyone was connected. Uh, People tended to be, quote unquote, good people, tended to observe, be an observer, not always 100% engaged, but the observing part was very, very active.
Mhm.
And I found, in addition, that sense of the easy access to the higher soul awareness. So I
Mm.
found all these commonalities. And I also started to explore in the book of what the spiritual lessons were. What can we learn from this phenomenon? And so I shared a lot of that in the book, um, because I feel that the higher soul awareness is so important. I put a meditation, I think it's in the appendix,
Mm.
on that can help you go to the higher soul awareness.
Nice.
So this material has grabbed me quite a bit because of not just being weird and different, but of what it can teach us. And I think another important lesson is that there is a greater drama going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we are all playing roles in it, usually unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like there's more than one reason why we're on this planet. And one is the personal, which has to do with soul growth and unfolding, and the other has to do with the roles we play in the greater drama. And I feel that the greater drama is to push humanity forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that standpoint, my sense is yes, all of this is divinely ordained, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just as we have that energetic encoding of the path we are to take, the plan for our lives, and that does not negate free will.
Right.
Because on the highest levels, time doesn't exist, so it was always known what we would have chosen anyway. So there's just in that book, I got to get into a lot of different aspects. And so I'm big on, do not try to repress your individual side. Get into your essence while you're also working on your spiritual awareness.
Right.
There's even more
The balance.
It's just, and I think too, the more information that comes out about the other side, people who remember the other side can not only help with spiritual understanding, but it can also help allay a lot of people's fears about death.
Yes.
And what will happen. I also explain the higher soul awareness that
Mm-hmm.
we came in with, because what I share with people is the soul was not created at conception. The soul already existed, and the soul had awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
for those of us with these memories, we don't think of having been born. We think in terms of when I came here.
Right.
When I came here and had to get into a body.
Yes.
So I love working with that material. I
Yeah, that sounds like
really do. And different people with these memories have different experiences, but there's so much
Mhm.
that is shared in common. And it does not give you a free pass in life that you're happy
Right.
and that you don't have difficult experiences growing up.
Right. You have a combination, right?
Yes, yes.
Like,
And
because
the
we do,
commonality.
right, because we have duality, but we need that contrast because Abraham Hicks' teachings is that we have positive and negative polarity because if we didn't, we wouldn't have an experience.
Well, and we wouldn't be learning and growing and unfolding.
And that too
Yeah, I
could
mean,
be.
we would love utopia.
Yes, who wouldn't? Yeah,
We're here for more than one reason.
that's great. So tell us, how can we, before we get to that, uh, well, no, let's do this first. How can we get the book?
Ah, well, the book right now is technically out of print.
Oh, okay.
Some people have told me it was a little ahead of its time. Um, I do have some copies that I'll be putting up on Amazon. I'm not sure when because I'm in a bit of transition right now.
Okay.
And I will also be looking for a new publisher for it.
Okay. Well, do you have a website that people can contact you at if they want, if they have questions? Do you mind getting questions from the audience?
Not at all. And it's
Okay, so
very
how can we?
easy. DianeBrandon.com.
DianeBrandon.com. And we'll put,
DianeBrandon.com.
okay, well, no problem. We'll put the link underneath the video. And people can also book sessions with you.
Absolutely.
And these are
And
dream interpretation sessions and
oh
past
yes.
regression.
Oh yes.
Mm.
Intuitive sessions, dream interpretation, and I do bring my intuition in there. Individualized guided meditation, regression.
Great.
I love working with people on path in life and unfolding and, relationships.
That sounds wonderful. Now, Diane, before we go, if there was one pearl of wisdom you could share with the world, what would it be?
Well, I actually wrote it down.
Oh, nice.
I would like everyone to realize that you have so much within you, and perhaps more than you even know you have within you. So allow yourself to explore your depths. A lot of people use meditation. However you do it,
Mhm.
explore your depths, embrace your true self. I mentioned essence. Be who you truly are. Embrace that. It's not bad, it's good. Allow yourself to open up and connect with every living being outside of you. Develop your potential, including your intuition. Allow yourself to work on, heal, and remove any blocks and old pain. And allow yourself to open up and live vibrantly and purposefully. And allow yourself to realize that there's always more. There's always more to learn. There's always more unfolding. And it is all positive.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Diane. I really appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Dale. It's been wonderful to speak with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. That's been another edition of the Soul Inspire Podcast. See you next time. The Soul Inspire Podcast is brought to you by DaleCross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At DaleCross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission. Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at DaleCross.net and live your greatness.